Hey guys, how's it going? Kevin Cleary here with a knife video for you. And today I want to answer probably, if not the most, one of the very, very high questions on the list of questions that I regularly get asked. And that is people who are, thinking of trying out a new brand. Maybe they're going from budget stuff. They've had a Rat Metal one for a few years and they say, Kevin, I want to go and try a Spyderco. I've heard so many good things. Which Spyderco should I try? Spyderco obviously isn't the only one, but certainly it's one of the names that comes up. And what I've done here is kind of put in like the brands that most often come up, and I'm just going to quickly work through those and say, look, if you want to try, one ZT, one Benchmade, one Spyderco, I'll give you like the top three options. And it looks like I stupidly forgot one of the options. Anyway, that's fine. We're gonna work our way through it. So we're gonna go through a number of popular knife brands, and I'll give you what I would suggest if someone were to ask me. Okay, so someone sends me a message and says, Kevin, look, I have had bad experience with Kershaw before, but I want to give them another try. What Kershaws should I check out? And that is actually a pretty easy one. I would suggest more recently the Tumbler is great. The Kershaw Link is fantastic. And the Kershaw Blur, all of which very enjoyable knives and ones that I've tried and had good experiences with. Thinking of Kershaw, what about ZT? And this is a pretty common one, guys. People sort of see ZT as, and I really think it is, it's sort of the gateway brand, okay? You have been, in the Spyderco Benchmade, $100 to $200 sort of price range, and now you want to bump that up to something a little bit nicer. And so people, this is probably the most asked, want to get their first ZT and they want to know which zero tolerance should I get. And I've actually got three main answers and then an honorable mention. So for me, this is a pretty easy one. The 0562, or especially the 0562 Ti. The 0630 is one of my favorite zero tolerances. The 0308, and an honorable mention to the 0393. Now the 393 and the 562 are both Hinderer designs, and that's probably what makes them stand out. They're just very versatile utility. Like you can buy those and still use them the way you have been using whatever else you've had. Okay, so those would be the zero tolerances that I would recommend. Moving on to Benchmade. All right, I want to get a Benchmade. Which Benchmade should I try? Well, this one is discontinued now, but it's an easy recommend. The Benchmade Super Freak or the M4 Freak. The next one on my list is going to be the Benchmade Crooked River. Absolutely love this knife. Now you're not going to find one exactly like mine. It's been slightly modified, but of course the Benchmade Griptilian, especially the 2020 CV Griptilian with the G10, is another fantastic option. And if none of those are worthwhile for you, you may want to check out the Contigo. That's a great one as well. So Benchmades, again, I'm trying to stick to three, but I keep throwing in sort of an extra one at the end. So Benchmades are Griptilian, Super Freak, and Crooked River. Moving on now to Spyderco. Sorry, wow. I jumped a whole paragraph down in my list. So you want to try out your first Spyderco. Well, for me, this is a pretty easy one. Again, I would be looking at one of these two or the last one that I forgot to bring with me. So we've got the Spyderco Paramilitary 2, the Spyderco Amalgam. The other one that would be on my very short list would be the Spyderco Manix 2. Various forms. My favorite, if you've been around at all, is the lockback. Many people don't love lockbacks, but that would be a pretty safe bet. The Para 2, the Manix, or the Amalgam. The Sage series would be the next on the list for those who kind of don't like larger stuff. If you're looking for something a little bit smaller, look at something from the Sage series. All right, what about, let's try a ColdSteel. And this one is pretty common. ColdSteel is one of those knives. I'm going to hold off on this for a second to give you a little bit of intro. ColdSteel is one of those companies that, I don't know, it fits in a weird niche. People, it's sort of like, Mall Ninja BS knives that don't get a lot of respect from the cool kids in the community. And since I'm not one of those, I just love ColdSteel. If you want to try your first ColdSteel, I would recommend the Recon 1, the 8010, or perhaps I don't know about better than all of them, but maybe more broadly appealing than these two because of its very well balanced size and design would be the American Lawman. The Ultimate Hunter would also be an alternative on this list, but out of these, this is the one I recommend the most. A lot of people, this is one of the best all-around EDC knives on the planet. Okay, this along with probably this and this and a couple others, but the Spider, wow, the ColdSteel American Lawman is really, really a master's class in what makes a great EDC knife. And so this is going to be my top recommendation. Okay, this would be number 2, the 8010, and then the Recon 1, because it's a little bigger. I know it's not going to be for everybody, but it's still a great knife. All right, moving over to Chris Reeve. I want to get a Chris Reeve. Should I go with the 21? Should I wait? Should I go with the new 31? I recommend everyone to go with the Inkosi. I like the others. I like the 31 fine. I recently reviewed it. I really enjoyed it. I like the ergonomics just marginally better on the Inkosi, and I like the extra little bit of toughness and overbuiltness. Now that's just me, but if if you've had a lot of more user style knives, I think a lot of people are going to identify well with the Inkosi, especially with the way it feels in hand. Do I even need to mention Hinderer? I think probably everyone who tries a Hinderer, their very first Hinderer is going to be an XM18. You might want to try the full track. That would be another good option. I know Slicey Dicey loves the Jurassic. There are a couple others, but I think most people, and probably the way to get into Hinderer is with a standard version of the XM18, and then you can sort of diversify from there. Lion Steel has some great knives. I love the Lion Steel. If you want to try a Lion Steel folder, the Kerr is fantastic. I love the Lion Steel Kerr. The Thrill is great. And of course, you guys all know my favorite Lion Steel, my favorite fixed blade is the Lion Steel M4. And that holds, of course, 2 categories there. Finally, let's talk about buck. I don't have any buck knives with me, but if you want to try a buck knife, and this is something that I think people get into knives, and maybe they buy a Rat Model 1, maybe they buy a Recon 1, maybe they buy, something from Spyderco, but we all know the name of buck. Anyone, people who don't even know anything about knives know about buck knives. And so, people think, well, what's buck up to these days, and is there something that's appealing to me? And so if you're into sort of modern folders, okay, the Slim 110 Pro, or even just the regular Slim 110 is really, really great. They're not expensive. I think like $25 for the budget version in 420HC, and I think it might be $80 or $90 for the micarta S90V version. Maybe S30V. I better correct that one. So that would be the way to go. I think if you like modern folding knives, that would be a good option for you. The other would be the 810. What do you call it now? Marksman, the Buck Marksman. I think it's the 810. If I've got that number wrong, someone please correct me down in the comments. I'll roll a picture in here anyway. The other option from Buck is Buck has some really compelling, because they do a great job on heat treating their 420HC. There are a bunch of super cheap Buck knives out there, like $19 at Canadian Tire, that are going to have that 420HC and perform decently for you. Certainly better than anything else at Canadian Tire, likely, and better than a lot of other budget knives. So that's where I would steer you on all of those brands. Now there are other brands, guys, but honestly, CRKT, for example, comes to mind, or a bunch of overseas brands come to mind. And I don't know, they're just not as compelling. And I don't see people, if you want to check out a Civivi, it's not expensive. Just check one out. Almost anything they do is good. It's a little harder if you're going to drop a little bit more money on, a Spyderco, a Benchmade, a Zero Tolerance, something like that. So that's where I focused with these videos. With this video, I should say, go ahead and add any further recommendations that you want to down in the comments section. Thanks a lot for watching. Don't forget to check out those channel sponsors. We will talk to you soon.